Hello, so St. Olaves Booklet 1, and we're looking at the English comprehension. I've read through this and I've highlighted some of the key points here, and we're going to look through the answers together. Well, the questions. So first of all, make sure you read the whole passage. Every time if you're struggling with understanding understanding a text, that's going to be a really big issue in terms of actually answering the question. So if you are struggling with this, what you might want to do is take it home and read it with like a dictionary and then summarize each paragraph to make sure that you are able to understand it in an open book setting. Okay. Either way, we're going to go through this. The main idea here is they use this sunstone to navigate, right? And they have also this person called the navigator who helps them as well. And then it ends off by saying that we might chuckle at sailors consulting this rock, right? We might laugh at this, but obviously it seemed to have worked quite well. Okay, so if we look at the first question here, you can say, what can be inferred about the Vikings' priorities based on their use of the sunstone? So the sunstone is used to navigate. So what their priority is going to be, they're going to be valuing precise navigation and to support exploration. Okay, they want to navigate, they want to go out to sea and things like that. So you can see there we go. Vikings were fearless seafarers, okay? So they wanted to, that basically means that they were obviously fearless in terms of they're not very frightened, and they wanted to, because they're seafarers, they wanted to continue sailing and explore the world, okay? So that's going to leave us with option A. Now you can see the other options, it's not jewellery, the sunstone wasn't even jewellery, these crystals were not predicting weather like months ahead, it was just more for a few days ahead in terms of finding the weather for the actual sail, right, for when they start sailing. And it's not necessarily magic either. There's real evidence here that this was working, and it was using the sun's sort of reflection and things like that. Okay. Question 2, according to the passage, why was the sunstone wrapped in lambskin before the voyage? So you just have to find the keyword of lambskin. You should be able to find the answer here. It's always going to be in the passage. So if we look at the highlighted section that we have right here, it was wrapped in lambskin for luck, basically. Alright, so which one of these options is going to be the answer there? It's going to be this one. It was a good luck ritual. Question 3, how did the Vikings think the sunstone helped them determine direction? Okay, so if we look at what's going on here, the stone split the incoming light into two overlapping images, okay? And the twin images met most sharply, that would reveal the hidden sun's position, okay? So now you don't need to really understand exactly how this is working, but let's look at the options and it should give us an idea. You can see right here, reveal the sun's location by splitting into two images, and that's exactly what the passage had just said. You can always find the answer in the passage, okay? Question 4, what attitude did they have towards divine or cosmic forces suggested by the ceremony before sailing? So what is the ceremony that they do before sailing? It's this one right here. Small ceremony where they do the lambskin, etc. So what is the attitude that they have? So let's look at the options. They ignored the gods. Well, they wouldn't do a ritual if they're ignoring the gods. They treated navigation purely as a scientific task. If it was, then they wouldn't be doing a good luck ritual, again, because that's not necessarily scientific. They believed respect and ritual could influence their success. And exactly, so it's a good luck ritual, okay? So they're hoping that this ritual is going to influence or make them more successful, okay? They're not doing it out of fear of punishment. They're trying to do better, okay? Question 5. So the main purpose of the sunstone, we already know this is for navigational purposes, so option C is going to be the answer right there. Question 6, what can be inferred about this person's expertise? So this is a navigator, as you can see in the text, right? So what are the options right here? It says, was it memorized poems? Did it require several observation techniques? Was it guessed based on previous journeys or solely on the crystal's color? So you can see up here what he did is he observed the sea color, the bird flight, and the wave pattern. So these are different things that he's observing. All right, so he's using different observational techniques to help them direct, not just using the crystal. Okay. Question 7: why did the Vikings consult a specialist navigator before adjusting to the sea steering oar? Sorry. And if we again go back up to here, it says it was not the only part of the toolkit. Okay, the navigator is part of the toolkit. He would also apparently perform a short duel with the crystal, and again that would help them find the sun's bearing, and only then would they adjust the steering oar. So this is where we're getting the sort of evidence, or not, like this is exactly the question that it's asking. Okay, so now we have to figure out like why are they doing this. So there's no overt reason here as to why they do it, so there's nothing like clearly saying that they do this because of this, but you can infer from here. So they're using loads of these different techniques, looking at the sea color, bird flight, wave patterns. If you're using multiple techniques and not just relying on one, obviously you're more likely to get an accurate sort of reading of what you need to do here. So they seem to be valuing this idea that the navigator is able to do a few more things and just look at the stone, and is able to use that to help them. So if we look at question 7, what's the answer going to be here? It's going to be he could interpret multiple signals and not just the sun's bearing, so it's obviously going to help them be more accurate when they're adjusting the steering oar. Okay. Question 8. What is broader social value is revealed in the Vikings' navigation practices? So social value, this is a complex concept. Okay, so we can read the options first before you go back to looking for this in the text. So, emphasis on communal decision making. So communal, that means like together. So that means they sort of share the responsibility of making decisions. Okay. Distrust of craftsmanship. So that means they sort of distrust scientific evidence and like making good tools, and they favor luck. Well, not necessarily, because the sunstone is like a form of craftsmanship, like it has reasons behind it. They do favor luck, but not necessarily over craftsmanship. They want to use both. Okay, a preference for short voyages close to shore. There's no real evidence of this, and an indifference towards technological innovation. So again, no real evidence to this. What does this mean? Indifferent means that they don't really care about it, and technological innovation means when you sort of create new technology, right? Like the way we have sat-navs today, right? And we created that. So there's no real evidence for that, but what they do, we have to look for the evidence for this one. Communal discipline and shared responsibility, if we are going to go with that one. So if we come back up here, hopefully what we can find right here. So the crew shared dried fish, recited prayers to Thor and Freya, and they maintained silent watchfulness. So because they're all doing this together to try and help, this is showing the shared responsibility and communal decision making. Okay, that's going to be the best answer here. Question 9. The author... Which statement best describes the author's viewpoint on the sunstone? So the viewpoint of the author is usually actually in the conclusion or the introduction. If we look at the conclusion, this is the last paragraph. It says here, we might chuckle at them consulting a lump rock to help them navigate. And he says the future children may laugh at us for tapping glass rectangles, which he means are phones, right? So we use the phone to navigate, right, whenever we're lost. So he's saying just because this was a long time ago, so they were doing what they can with the technology that they had, maybe the people in the future are going to laugh at us with our technology, right? So if you look at the end, he's giving a rhetorical question. So after all, if a time traveler handed you a shimmering crystal and claimed that it could locate the sun behind a thick fog, would you believe him? The Vikings did, and judging by the settlements they founded from Newfoundland and Novgorod. So settlements is when they sort of colonize some place. They capture a territory. They capture some land. Okay, their trust in that glittering compass was well placed. So it's basically saying they managed to do all of this. So it was probably a good idea that they trusted in this lump of rock to help them. So he seems to be quite on board with this idea. He doesn't think it was stupid. He thinks it was quite smart. Okay, so what is that gonna give us as the option? They were clever tools demonstrating the Vikings' ingenuity. There we go, option C. He does not think they're unreliable, so definitely not option A. Question 10. According to the passage, how might future children view the phone-based navigation apps we use today? So the answer was right there in the passage. They might laugh at us. Okay, there we go.
We are starting off with the math section, question number 11, and we are working on fractions. And so we have percentage questions in here because percentages, fractions are all part of the same thing. It's all to do with proportion. So to find 30% of 750, what does percent mean? Percent means out of 100. Out of 100. Percent. Per means every, let's say. So like per month means every month, and then cent means 100. So if we're finding 30% of 750, we need to do 30 over 100. Whoops. 30 over 100 times 750. Now, we know how to multiply fractions. We can cross this one out, cross that one out. We can cross these zeros out. So we are left with 75 times 3, which gives us 225. We're doing a similar thing with 5/8 over 72, and cross multiplying is very, very useful here. So we're going to cross multiply. 8 goes into 72 how many times? It goes in 9 times, so we're left with 5 times 9, which is equal to 45. And you'll see the answer there. Next question, question 12. So if 3/4 of a number is equal to 132, so we know 3/4 is equal to 132. So how many is 1/4 equal to? 1/4 is equal to 132 divided by 3. We're going to divide both sides by 3. So when you do that, you'll find that 132 divided by 3 is equal to 44. So if 1/4 is equal to 44, that means 4/4, so a whole, the whole number is equal to 44 times 4. And that should equal 176. So the answer will be A. So 0.3 as a fraction written in its lowest terms, we know that 0.3 is equal to 3/10. It's as simple as that. Can we simplify this any further? No, we can't. So the fraction in its lowest terms is 3/10. For the next one, we know how many zeros do we have. This fraction is equal to 5 thousandths. How many zeros? 1, 2, 3. It's equal to 5 thousandths. Can we simplify this anymore? Yes, we can. 5 goes into 1,200 times. Therefore, the fraction in its lowest terms is 1 over 200. For the next one, we have 0.77. It's the same thing as this one. How many thousandths is it? When we've got 3 decimal places, we know it's over 1,000. So if it's 707 thousandths, can we simplify this anymore? No, we cannot. Therefore, this is a simplified fraction. So this question has multiple steps, so I'm going to give myself a lot of room to do this. There are 120 pupils in total, and what I'm going to do is right up here. Can you see what I'm doing? Yes, you can. Over here we have boys, and then we have girls. So if we know that 2/5 of 120 is equal to boys, 120 is equal to 5 goes into 120 24 times. So we know that 24 times by 2, there are 48 pupils who are boys. This means that the rest of them are girls. So how do we do that? To find the girls, we do 120 minus 48, which is equal to 72. Now, we're not done. We need to know how many of the pupils are writing in pencil. So, if they're writing in pencil, we know how many. 3/4 of the boys are writing in pencil, so that means we need to find 3/4 of 48. 3/4 of 48, and let's write pencil here. Pencil is equal to 3/4 times 48. Now let's cross this out. 4 goes into 48 12 times, so 3 times 12 is equal to 36. But we are also not done. It says that 1/3 of the girls are writing in pen. So if 1/3 of the girls are writing in pen, this means pencil is equal to the rest. 3/3 minus 1/3. 2/3 of the girls are writing in pencil. So we have to find 2/3 of 72. How do we do that? 3 goes into 72 24 times, and then 24 times by 2 is equal to 48. So to find the total pencils, here, total pencils is equal to 48 plus 36, which is equal to 84. Therefore, the total number of pupils writing in pencil is 84. So Julie has some ribbons. We need to find out how many ribbons does Julie have altogether. So we are just finding out total, so it makes the rest of the question easy to us. Let's do 12 plus 27 plus 9 plus 2. This gives us 20. We carry the 2 and we end up with 2 plus 2 plus 1, which is equal to 50. She has 50 ribbons all together. Next, how many ribbons, what fraction of the ribbons are blue? We have 12 over 50. Now, is this in its simplest terms? No, it's not. We can divide both sides by 2. The numerator will be 6. And the denominator will be 25, therefore the answer is 6/25. Next we have keyword percentage. What percentage of the ribbons are green? First, let's figure out the fraction. What's the fraction of ribbons that are green? We have 2 over 50. Therefore, to find the percentage, we know that percentage is over 100. Well, how did we get from 50 to 100? We times by 2, so we just need to do that to the numerator, and as a percentage that will be 4%. To find the fractions giving its simplest form, we need to find the common denominator, and the common denominator that it should be is the lowest common multiple of all these numbers, which is 12. 4 goes into 12, 3 goes into 12, 2 goes into 12. Now we need to change all the numerators to match. 1/4 is equivalent to 3/12 plus, we have to multiply this by 4, so this becomes plus 4, and then we have to multiply this by 6, so the numerator becomes plus 6. What does that end up giving us? 13 over 12. Actually, if you notice here, this is a minus, which, my apologies, I didn't see. So we're actually going to minus 6. Therefore, we have 7 minus 6 over 12, which is equal to 1 over 12. So for question 17, the simplest way I would do this is to convert them into improper fractions. So we have 3 times 3 plus 1 is equal to 10 over 3. Now, what would 5 and 2/5 be as a whole as an improper fraction? We do 5 times 5, which is 25, plus 2, which is 27 over 5. Now, we can actually cross multiply this. 1, this becomes 2. We can cross out that, and this 3 goes into 27 9 times. So what do we end up with? We end up with 18 as a whole number. So that worked out nicely. So for question 18, we're going to try and get them to as many of the similar denominators that we can. So to try and compare them, which one is smaller, which one is larger. So this one over here, we can make it as this denominator 18. How do we do that? If we multiply the bottom by 2, that means we end up with 8 over 18. Now, I notice here that now we've got these new fractions, we can make all of them over the denominator 36. So what's this over 36? I'm just going to write them here below. This will be 14 over 36. This one will be 16 over 36. This one will be times by 3 over 36. This would be 15 over 36. Then we have 1 over 3, that should be 3 over 30. Oops, actually times 12. It should be 12 over 36. Now that we have these all in the same denominator, now it will be much easier to order. So going off this, we know that this one corresponds, it's the lowest. This one corresponds to 1/3, therefore 1/3 should be over here. Next one should be 7 over 18, as that one is only 14 over 36. And then we have 15 over 36, which corresponds to 5/12. They are equivalent. And then that leaves us as 4/9 as the largest fraction. So for question 19, this helps with looking at diagrams and percentages. So we have a hedge, and this hedge is 100%. So that means that's a whole hedge. Now it increased its height by 1/4. So how much is this whole? It just increased there. How much is this whole hedge? It is now, we know 1/4 is equal to 25%. Therefore, the whole new hedge is 125%. However, if we want to cut away the fraction of the whole new hedge, which is 125%, we need to cut off 25%. But how much of a fraction of this new hedge, so it's no longer 100, the whole hedge is 125%. If we need to get rid of 25%, we need to find as a fraction how much 25% is of this new hedge. Simplify this down, 25 goes into 125 5 times, therefore our new fraction is 1/5. So this is a similar type question for question 20. If 2/3 of a number is 24, in fact, let me rub this out, is equal to 24. We need to find the whole number first, so let's find 1/3. We divide both sides by 2, we get 12. That means 3/3, i.e. the whole number, and make sure we're lining up our equal signs, is equal to 36. Now, let me just move this up so you can see it. Now, if we know our whole number, what's 3/4? 3/4 of 36. 4 goes into 36 9 times, and we get 27 as our answer. And that is the math section. So we are doing verbal reasoning with question number 21. Now we first have to find the different relationship compared to the others. Let's analyze the relationships of these words. A, we have brave and courageous. B, happy and joyful. I'm seeing that it's some sort of synonym. C, we have sad and cheerful, which is a bit out of the relationship than the others. D, sharp and pointed, again another synonym. And then dry and arid, again another synonym. So the only one I'm seeing that has a different relationship is C. Question number 22. Which of the following is an odd word out? For 22, we have swam swiftly, walk lazily. They all have an adverb. So it's not something necessarily to do with a different adverb. But what I do see here, swam, walk, jump, dance, they're all verbs to do with doing something physically, like moving in a certain way. Jumping, dancing, walking, swimming. However, sang loudly isn't really a movement. It is something to do with the body, but it's not a movement. So the odd one out would be E. Which one here is an adverb? Adverbs normally end in ly. All the others, adverb is describing how he did the doing word. Planning is the doing word, and carefully is how he did it. Therefore, adverb. It's B. Okay, so we can very easily see here that one of these words corresponds to the longest one. Alien has more letters than all the others. Every other one has got 4 letters. Alien has got 5 letters, and this is the only one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that has 5 letters. Therefore, we know A is equal to 1. A is equal to 1. We know L is equal to, and this one sort of tells us the code for every letter we need. L is equal to 2. So we know that our word has to start with a 2. Therefore, we can cross out all the ones that don't end in a 2. So A and C. And then we know that the next one, so let's continue this, A-L-E-N, E is equal to 3. So we know that the word has to go to 3. We can cross out B, we can cross out E, and then we're left with D as our answer. So for question 25, we are going to make 5 spaces for all the people, and we can just call them A, B, C, and D, and E, which they've given us nice names. We can just do the alphabet. So we can straight away put down David is the oldest over here. We don't have to think about that one at all. David is the oldest, he's 25, and then the youngest is Bob. It says right here, Bob is the youngest, David is the oldest, and he's 21. Now we know someone has to be in the middle. Emily is older than Chris, but younger than David. So we see here that Emily has to be in the middle. So she can be older than Chris and younger than David. So how old is Chris? We can see they go up consecutively. Where does it say consecutive? There it does. So we know that the answer has to be A. So for 26, we have to do this in the descending order of letters. What does descending mean? It goes from largest to smallest. So just by looking at this, I know that melodies definitely has the most. We have to start off with melodies. So we're trying to save time here. I don't necessarily have to count. If you're unsure, you can. But just by looking at that, I can see melodies has the most. So we're going to cross out this, that. In fact, we can cross out all of them because melodies is the only one in option A that starts off with melodies. So 26 is A. So next one we have the same thing, descending order of vowels, largest to smallest. So let's count the vowels in each word. I'm guessing that mountain has the most. Let's count it. 1, 2, 3, 4. This one has 4. Next one, it looks like moon has 2. And I think the only has 1. Remember that you can have the same amount of vowels, they have to be put in the same order. So it matters if one's capital, if one's not. 1, 2, 1, 2, 2. So we know we have to start with mountains, Cross these out. We also have to end with two thes. So it definitely, both these end with two thes. So let's just double check these are right. 1, 2, 1, 2. So since they all have the same, you have to do it in the order in which they appeared. The order in which they appeared, the only one that ends up in is in E. So moon rises over and then the mountains at the beginning. So for 28, we're going to look at the final letter in alphabetical order. So final letters here are A. No other word is A. So we know that it definitely has to start with T. We can cross out B, D, and E. Now, just a quick scan here. Which word do we have to end with? So it's between S, T comes after S, E, all of them, D, L. And let's just write this down so it's easier to see. D, L, S, and T. I know T has to be at the last. That's the one that's most later on in the alphabet. So if you have to end with hot, we can't cross anything more out actually. So what's the next one? We know that it has to be ST. That's the order of the alphabet. Therefore, the only one that it can be is C. So rearrange the words. Following sentence in descending order of syllables. Descending means biggest to largest, and I'm going to do a dot every time it's got a syllable. Magnificent. Whoop. Okay, so that one's a bit difficult to see. They've got 4 though. Mountains. Make is 1 syllable. Merry. And they've just come up there. And then music. So most words, most syllables we can see is in magnificent. Cross out these. Now we know we have to end with make because it's only got 1 syllable. Therefore the answer has to be E. Question 30. Which one of the following are homophones? Now homophones means words that sound the same. So meet, 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 and might. So the ones that sound the same are meet, meet, and meet. Therefore, the answer has to be B. Meet, meet, and meet only, not might. This is the NVR section, which starts with question number 31. And so we have to try and find a relationship or an analogy. So we can see here that this first shape has been reflected over this axis over here, the x-axis. Therefore, if it goes inwards, it's going to go outwards there. So this one, we have to have a box here and a box there. Therefore, we can cross out quite a few. We can cross out A, we can cross out C, and we can cross out D. So pretty much we already have our answer, B. Question 32. In this one, we see that these triangles are also, in a way, entering the middle. So the shapes on the outside are going to go in the inside. And so if that's happening, these blocks, these black blocks are going to go in here. And therefore, the whole thing will look fully black. You'll see that this one goes inside and then the whole shape will fill up. Therefore, the only option we can have is C. So the first clue for 33 that helps me the most is this top shape is going to rotate 90 degrees clockwise. So if it's horizontal, it's going to become vertical. So if this shape rotates 90 degrees clockwise, that means we will have something that looks like B or C or D. So I'm going to, actually no, we can cross out A and B. Something that looks like C and D, because you'll see that this thicker line will go horizontal, just like C and D. Next thing is I see that this black shape, this black square becomes, if it's white here, it'll be black in the next. Therefore, if it's black here, it will be white in the next. Therefore, our option is D. So in these shapes, there's 2 things we need to focus on. We need to focus on white and we need to focus on black. So white, I can see, goes from this point to that point. It's going in a clockwise direction. However, the black square goes to this one. It's going in an anti-clockwise direction. So moving that vertex in an anti-clockwise direction. So if this black square is going in an anti-clockwise direction, it will end up in this point. Therefore, we can cross out B and D. And if this white square is going in a clockwise direction, it will end up here. Therefore, our answer has to be A. So for 35, if this is black, it's going to stay black. If this is white, it's going to stay white. Therefore, B is definitely not the option. So if we have two lines, it's going to not double or triple, or it's not like we're just going to add one line. If it's two lines horizontal, then we're going to have two lines vertical. In the same way, if we have one line horizontal, we're going to have one line vertical. Therefore, we'll have only C as our option. So over here in question 36, all that's happening is that they're giving us some operations and we have to apply them to the next questions. So if this one, which one can we see over here? This, let's match it up to our operations. We see that in most likely, we have to all symbols rotate 90 degrees clockwise. So it's that simple. If we have to rotate 90 degrees clockwise, perhaps this one is the most easiest one for you to find. We need to know that this black bit will be on the right hand side, therefore it cannot be A, it cannot be C. So the only things we're dealing with now is if we have this peace sign, because we have these the same, we need to focus on the peace sign. If this peace sign is going in a 90-degree rotation, then it's going to end up looking diagonal this way. And the only one that looks like that is D. So in this one, let's look at where the shapes are going. I can see that no shapes are switching places. We are moving them, in fact, in an order. I can see that this one moves to there, and this shape moves to there. So we know, and then this one will come around that way. We know that we are moving all the shapes one place to the left. Which one does that correspond to? We're looking at this, therefore, oops, B is our answer. So this one's quite interesting because we're going to reflect this in the vertical axis. Therefore, if we reflect these in the vertical axis, these shapes don't actually change. The only one we have to focus on is this one. We know that the black has to be on the left-hand side. Therefore, we cross out B, we cross out D. But now focus. We're not reflecting the entire thing in the y-axis, because then if we did, then the circle would end up here, then we would have the arrow, then we would have the T. Be mindful that in here, only the shape itself is being reflected. So A would be our answer, as none of the shapes are changing places, it's just the shapes themselves are being reflected on the vertical axis. So in 39, it says that second and third symbols change places. So all of them have already done this for you. That square is in the middle, and it's in the middle in every single one, so we can't really cross any out. However, we do have this all triangles change shading thing. So we need to find the inverse of all of these. So if these are black, then it's going to go white, and there's only one black triangle in the center. Now the only one that happens with is C. And just to confirm, if it's only black on the inside, it'll be only white on the outside, just over here. So if first and third symbols change size, this is question 40, we know that we're going to have triangle here and then moon here. However, we also have this second operation. We know that the first and second symbols change places. Therefore, this ends up being the first symbol now becomes the second, and this little black arrow, in fact, let's put this here. This little black arrow is going to go on the outside. This moon is going to go... Oh, actually, let's not get confused. They're not changing places, first and third. They are merely changing size. Therefore, we can rub this out. It's going to stay the same. However, we know that this moon is going to get larger, like that. This triangle is going to get somewhat smaller, but the middle one is going to stay the same. Now, what happens if they change places 1 and 2? We get this black arrow on the outside. We get this triangle on the inside and then a fat moon on the right, which looks a bit like D.